Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to deTour and our RIBA Talk. Thank you, firstly, to our host, deTour, for providing this platform for our talk series, which has taken place since 2015. I'm Sarah Lee, the Honorary Secretary for the RIBA Hong Kong chapter, and one of an 11-strong committee, some of whom are here today. And the chapter launched in 2012. Yes, the chapter launched in 2012 and represents the interests of over 1,000 members here, and as well as promoting recognition of design excellence and design promotion. We advocate design discourse on architecture, the built environment within the design industry, and our events include design competitions, community events, open house tours, publications, social gatherings, and joint events with other organizations, which are open to both chapter members and friends. We've hosted several online webinars as well across our international chapters, such as last year's online deTour talk. And so we're very pleased to be back in person with a very exciting lineup here from the world of academia, design, and architecture for 21. This year's topic responds to the festival curatorial theme of usefulness. And we're delighted to introduce our host today, Thomas Chung from Chinese University, who will now open up the session and introduce our topic, Ornament is or is not a crime, and also our panelists. So thank you, Thomas. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, and RIBA for inviting me to this thing. Before I talk about the debate title, maybe I introduce our two teams, as it were. Yes, we have because the debate is actually, the title is Ornament is a crime or ornament is not a crime, right? And I guess we want to debate it within the field of design and architecture, and there are many different views, and I'm sure the debate will be quite lively. So on the proposition team, proposing that ornament is a crime, we have Jason Hilgefort, urbanist architect, having a founder of Land and Civilization Compositions and adjunct professor at HKU Architecture. On the same team, we also have Kay Wong, who's a curator and designer and artist, and have her own fashion label or fashion clinic. We also have Justin Lau, project director of Oval Partnership, and also well-established architect. So these guys will pitch for Ornament is a crime, okay? And then on the opposition team, we also have three amazing people. We have Mr. Alvin Yip, visiting professor at Chinese Academy of Fine Arts in Beijing, but also, everyone knows him as an amazing curator, designer, and doing lots of stuff. Then we also have Dr. Leon Xu, lecturer from our School of Architecture in Chinese U. And I think he also has a lot to say in architecture, maybe with respect to photography, image, and media. Last but not least, we have Ms. Sarah Klomps, director of Zaha Hadid Architects, and working on an amazing project in Central. Hopefully we'll see that come up soon. Yes. So you guys actually will be saying ornament is not a crime, right? Okay. And I guess what we'll do is, maybe I'll do my own slides first, and then we'll take a vote, and then go on to the presenters. Okay. All right, yes. So that's me. So teaching kind of modern architectural history at school, I can't resist the chance to maybe do a kind of modern architectural history. So in terms of ornament, so after defining what ornament can be, maybe I'll do my 5 alternative points in the history of modern architecture in relation to ornament. So, yes, ornament, well, I guess a lot of people would say it's related to decoration and adornment, and on the one hand, a kind of accessory, right? Decorative, and maybe not essential. But if we look at the root of the word ornament, the OR prefix, it actually relates to a functioning order, an ordering function to provide decorum. Ornament has this role in a setting, in a place, even in fashion and artwork. So it provides decorum and ordering so that people can relate to larger things like universal values or even the cosmos. Or, on the other hand, as an enhancing thing, beautifying thing, it relates to cosmetics. So, it's the idea of beautifying, glorifying, and so on. So it actually has a double meaning or a range of meaning. And when there is a kind of, in pre-modern societies, when beauty has a universal value of the highest ideals or even goodness, pattern and geometry is a kind of guide to thinking. So it's a means to an end. But when we come to the modern world, pattern and geometry seems to be explored as an end in itself. So aesthetics and beauty becomes very subjective. And it's like, I like, you like, and so on. Oops, sorry. Going forward. So that sets the scene, the kind of range of meaning of ornament. Then coming to modern architecture history, well, the first one is, oops, sorry. Form follows function. Yes, the phrase form follows function, as every good architecture student, history student knows, does not come from Bauhaus. Actually, it comes from Louis Sullivan in 1896, who is talking about ornament and how to actually ennoble tall buildings, these new building types. Being father of a skyscraper and teacher of Frank Lloyd Wright, his buildings are actually full of ornaments because he thinks the life force of buildings have to be expressed. So the form or ornament follows the function of tall buildings. So that's one thing. Another point, later on, 1908, Adolf Loos, right, where the title of this debate comes from, Ornament and Crime. And although he does say that the evolution of culture marches on with the elimination of ornament from useful objects, actually Loos is a believer in tradition, and for him, the right place, right time, right setting, ornament is very useful. And in his houses, if you look at beyond the laconic, simple outside, the interiors are amazingly ornamental in terms of pattern, materiality, and texture. And people, renovate his buildings and interiors would know that. And fast forward to 1954, Louis Kahn. He also talks about ornament, but he talks about it in terms of adoration of the joint. In his Salk Institute, the ornament comes from the joint, which shows the construction of the material and the building. So ornament, in a way, has become kind of reduced to a joint by Louis Kahn's time. Well, if we skip like 50 years of modern architecture, postmodernism and archigram, all that, we get to 2006 when in GSD, Farshid Musavi, published a book with her students on the function of ornament. And by this time, I guess, architecture or buildings have actually just become ornaments, both in the form, structure, screen, and surface. They analyze contemporary buildings. maybe architecture has become superfluous, just aesthetic accessories to how society works, how capitalism works, how corporate imaging and branding works. So I'll end with kind of going back a little bit to 1976. Bernard Tschumi, close the loop. If ornament has already become architecture, well, then what is architecture in relation to crime? And in his adverts to architecture, of course, Tschumi says, to really appreciate architecture, you might even need to commit a murder. I'm just going to take this and say what Tschumi actually means, or we interpret it as we want to find the limits, the weaknesses, the vulnerabilities of architecture. And as designers and creators, kind of creatively misuse, push it to the limits. Maybe you have to transgress rules in order to find out what are the possibilities. So I think I will end here by saying that if architecture, if architecture is about setting the rules and decorum, then of course ornament is not a crime. But as architects and designers, if we want to do our design in relation to larger issues and conditions of our time, it is definitely, for me, a crime not to address these pressing issues that we're facing in terms of social injustice or climate problems. So they're the two kind of sides of the coin. And then before I pass on to Jason, I think I'll ask the audience to take a vote on what are your positions right now, and we'll take another vote at the end of the debate to see if there are any changes. So we'll do a kind of hand count. Who is for ornament is a crime? You are only allowed to vote for once, is that right? Okay, next, and then 5. And ornament is not a crime. Wow. Okay. So, hard, yeah, you guys need to work hard. Okay, so Jason is the first to go.
All right. Well, after that vote, we'll see how this goes. But I think, as you alluded to, Thomas, if the argument is ornament is crime, we obviously have very pressing issues in our world today, and we can address those issues, and that can give a sense of identity to a thing. So I'll talk about a series of projects. This one I didn't work on, but an office I was at, it was prior to my time. It was just a series of pedestrian bridges, and by defining the shape, by where the bridge, where a car would turn, where a walkway would be, a bike lane, it could add a sense of character to the space with just a simple handrail, so addressing efficiency in cities. Or an amazing project, since it's RIBA, we'll talk about a British work, Assemblée, their lovely work. We obviously have to be efficient with our materials and reuse, and adding something is not decoration, it's activating. So that's part of ornament, is not crime, but it's about what we design to add on. Or further, just issues of sustainability, of course. A lovely building on the left in Melbourne, but something I was a part of when I was in India. We were asked by a concrete client to make a green building, because of course they wanted to do a bit of greenwashing, which you could certainly see as crime, and certainly ornament. But me, along with Rahul, the owner of the company, we talked about how we could do the green facade, but also how we could set it up to address the social issues that are obviously present everywhere in society, but particularly in India. So to have these partners in this corporation see the reality of income disparity within their country. A fourth project by friends of mine in the Netherlands, Amsterdam. I think it looks like ornament, but in the end, all this is about is expressing urban metabolism, kind of systems moving through the city, whether it's energy or birds, and it's really the building is trying to educate. So you could see it as ornament, but in reality, it's not ornament at all. It's extremely functional because it's trying to educate society. And lastly, a few projects that we've done at the office. Bottom left was a school building. just using the actual idea of the running track as basically a crown on top. Thinking about how you use materials. I talked about it in terms of sun shading, but also how we can push material use. And then on the top left, a small project, well, not small, but we had an ongoing debate about the role of red in China and as ornament, but how it related culturally. So that was necessary to paint it. And lastly, a project we have under construction in Fujian province, and is about high-tech food. But in the end, we did an installation in Shenzhen, where we even talked about the role of the eye today. So when we talk about ornament is crime, that's about what we see as a human. But with that project, we were trying to talk about what do birds see, what do machines see, who is the eye? So when we say ornament is crime, who is even deciding that? The machine, the bird, or other? Thank you.
Now I think we go to the opposition.
Right.
Alvin.
Now, well, first of all, I think the moderator already agreed with us that, and of course the audience, that ornament is not a crime. Thank you, Thomas. And I would like to reinforce that. And actually where?
It's here. No,
all right. I would like to reinforce that because my interest is very much on the word crime. And yesterday, I called well, he's a very senior lawyer. He's the managing director of the largest legal firm in the world, okay? So I called him, asked him whether ornament is a crime. And he said that from his knowledge in history and on planet, ornament is not a crime. So I think we are already on the winning side from a legal expert. But I'm a layman, so let's get on with a few casual slides. Now, I also sent him the slides that I've sent to Sarah as well. Both of us have chosen the left-hand side. We think that's a little bit nicer. And perhaps Jason would say no, it's very personal. He prefers the lady on the right-hand side. But I think it's something very straightforward. Sometimes ornament is just better, all right? Well, actually, I talk about the lawyer. We knew each other 35 years ago, and our first trip to Europe, to Paris. And when we talk about crime, we talk about evidence. So after 35 years, we still have the same belief that these two should coexist together. One, in a way, at a certain time, the modernists would say that, all right, go away. We don't want any ornamentation. But I do think that both of them do have a value that lasts even in the language of architecture. And also, some of my friends here might know that I curate from time to time. And a lot of times, I still believe that when I am installing architecture, it is also a practice of creating architecture. And in these cases, I call them the pure acts of architecture. And in these cases, the function we're taking away. One could almost argue that it is irrelevant when we say that whether ornament is useful or functional or necessary or not. Now, okay, 30, time's up. All right, so you can tell what I'm trying to say. I think the architects always use the word ornament today now in a kind of inferior understanding, which I think is a little bit unfair. Especially, I do think the concept of ornamentation, especially for your side, comes from a very masculine kind of a point of view. So I do think that we should pay respect to those who work on very small articulation, but also pays a lot of pursuit into aesthetics. Okay, I'll stop here. I'm overrunning. Thomas.
Thank you, Alvin. And well, I just have to respond. I did not say ornament is not a crime. If you believe in Bernard Tschumi, you have to commit a crime in order to rethink, recreate. But anyway, so we have our second proposition member, Kay, please.
はい、 So I'm coming from the fashion industry, and having run my fashion label for 10 years, and then deciding to stop a few years ago, is because I feel fashion as, like, I would define fashion as an ornament is a huge crime, because I've looked into so many documentaries, and just the fact that, you know, behind fast fashion, these factory workers in the third world is getting $1 a month. Every 30 minutes in India, a cotton farmer is killing themselves. We're buying these fleeting trends, like, for really cheap, buying lots of them, stuffing our home, and then dumping it in the landfill. So I definitely think it's a crime. And this is a reaction to how I feel about the fashion industry. These are made from the remnants from my brand. So wooden hangers making the bone structure, and the textiles remaining from my brand making these failing organs. And I call this fashion anatomy. I feel the fashion industry is sick. And that's why I created Fashion Clinic a few years ago. We tackle fashion waste for individuals and brands. We repair, redesign for them. We redesign dead stock material and garments for different people. This is an artwork I kept on reusing. Like, it came from a theater set that I worked on, and also it's like 15-year-old curtains from my friend, and I recreated it a few times. And most recent one is for this oyster farm on the sea, which is now in Laofaoshan. And we keep rethinking the mission of designers today, like, because I feel fashion or ornament is such a crime, and we're creating so much toxic material and waste. So in our studio today, we've got this needle punching machine, and we can turn fabric scraps back into new fabric. And we're developing functional products for the home and bags. So so I feel that the fleeting nature, disposable and wasteful nature of the fashion industry is criminal. Oh.
I think that deserves a huge support from us, because Kay's work really exposes the crimes, right, of her industry, but she still creates, still produces. Okay, now we have Leon on the other side.
Okay, thank you. I think at the very beginning we get a bit historical courses from Thomas. I think that it is quite common to understand that we are now facing a different area of the world, and we are arriving at where economic situation is a bit different. That if it is really necessary to consider that function is the only pursuit of our design. And on the other hand, by talking about the context, I think, say, architecture is part of design practice. And when we talk about design, we try to communicate with others. And considering storytelling is an important aspect. That's the reason why we keep talking about narrative and all these kind of things. This is a project I think that's quite well known in Hong Kong as a revamp of the public facilities. And of course, that when we consider these kind of facilities, function is the primary issue. But for the designer, I think that they have different kind of intention, what we can bring to the design. And for the architects, by what it means we can express our voice, and by what it means that we can express the voice of the certain generation or new generation. And actually, I'm a big fan of social media. I don't think it's a bad thing. By looking at, because we always claim architecture is for all, and everyone's a user. And by looking at the social media, in a way, we are able to get to know how people appreciate design, how they see the design. Maybe this is not the direction we are aiming for when we are in the design process. But in a way, the role of ornament can be used to communicating design narrative. The photo on the left is a project I have been photographed in the summer. And at that moment, that afternoon, I feel like I'm super involved in that atmosphere of the place. And then look into that photos. I was wondering, what is ornament? And the designer told me that originally when they received the project, actually the walls are white, clean, tidy. But in order to create that kind of atmosphere, bring this kind of cultural impact to your experience, they intended to make the world dirty in a way. So these kind of things remind me kind of say, by looking at Hong Kong, we are still start to ask our cultural identity. Everyone nowadays to talk about individuality, personality, and of course diversity. And by having ornament, in a way, would be enrich our perception and also as a way to identify our own cultural genes. Yeah, this is my point of view.
Thank you. Very well presented. The ornament as a role in cultural identity and communication. Okay, so we have Justin next in the proposition team.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I train as an architect. So today is really about sharing a session of some of our experiences. So let's start off with a conversation about a question of the word ornament. So I start to think in terms of a human-centric people type of spaces. I asked, actually not me thinking about it, it's asking the world to think about it. So how popular is the word ornament over time? This is search from internet, basically. This is a timeline from 200 years spanning from 1820 to 2020. And as we all can see from the left to right, ornament was highly used in the 1820. And when Loos' introduction of the ornament as crime, 1910, it started to decline. So does that mean that the word ornament is still fashionable, or is it something that it has changed to something else? So is the word ornament obsolete? But on the other hand, think about it. Ornament, what does that mean to you? Does the ornament have a sense of identity or history? Or do you say this is an ornament? Do you say this, it's something much more beyond ornament? It's something that has a sense of purpose and a sense of history. So I'd like to share a project, a placemaking project, which we recently completed in Xi'an. We took this idea of, historical references. So this is a cultural center for performances, 3 floors below ground. But the idea of craftsmanship, the idea of modularizations, repetitions, to create that sense of uplifting experiences for people to use it. But yet, what we really experience is nowadays, flexibility, sustainability, but also how people can really use spaces has changed how we use 100 years ago. People are much more diverse, has that sense of identity. For example, in here, the very place, we're sitting at PMQ, it used to be a different place, but now we're really curating kind of different experiences, just like here. So what we thought about the idea of ornament, is it really just the ornament itself? I believe that ornament, it's something has changed, the word, it should be shifted towards the way how we provide storytelling, that it gives identity to people, we think about how to be resilient. So I think the word ornament is a very speculative word, but is it a crime? It could be, but when we're doing design, it's really thinking about the people. So, thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Well, I think Justin has proved beyond doubt that ornament, the word, is obsolete, right? And architecture has to find another approach for storytelling. So, yes, now, last but not least, we have Sarah. Sarah, on the opposition side.
Okay. So first of all, I also started looking at ornament and what is ornament. an object that is decorative rather than useful, or decoration that is added to increase the beauty of something, which kind of means beauty isn't useful, which is not something necessarily I observe on a daily basis. It could also be attributed to a person. For example, humor is an ornament to a character, or a group of tones which has added on, which is added to a melody just to decorate it. So there is this idea that there is a principal functional aspect, and then there is an added something which is less worthy. So it has a lot to do with value, I suppose. Now, I don't think ornament is a crime, because I don't think we are able to do anything without having to, at some point, make a choice which is purely related to its appearance. Color is an ornament, white also. And I think the idea that we can create anything without an ornament or without using ornaments is an illusion. And I believe that ultimately the idea to say, okay, I can do without any ornaments is an illusion. And this is also quite apparent when you look at Loos, when he started thinking about clothing and what it does. And he basically then moved on to say, well, it's an ornament, it's okay, as long as I bring joy to my fellow men. So ultimately, at that point of the discussion, you already admitted that without ornament, it's not possible. So it is no longer about whether ornament exists or should be used or not. It's more about the worthiness of the ornament. And I think this is also why we are here today, and this is why this question is being asked, because we realize that our hunger of stimulation, of decoration, is causing problems, many problems, and that intuitively we come back to the same point than back then, that we realize we have to change something and less is more, possibly. So as a consequence of all of this, I don't think that ornament should be suppressed. I think it's rather more that we have to redefine its value, that we have to understand that we need ornament as humans, but we have to look at how we can give it more value. And so in a way, saying ornament is crime is like putting us on a diet. And yes, the diet is absolutely necessary, but instead of looking at why we are overeating in the first place, I think it would be better to redefine the value.
Thank you. I think that's a perfect ending to the debate for now. Now the next part is questions, right? Oh, panel discussion. Okay. So, well, what's the position for proposition team against opposition? Maybe each can kind of respond to the opposite team, starting with, I guess, Jason.
But I do think in the era of climate change and social issues, the need for efficiency and to be well using our products and how we treat each other. I understand this is a very debatable topic, but for the sake of the debate, if you're going to say ornament is not a crime, how do you defend that for the sake of the discussion in light of these times?
Well, the reason why we keep advancing our technology is to solve the problem in a way to make less harm to the earth. So by using more environment-friendly materials, we are able to solve that kind of issue. Although the manpower thing may be problematic, but people are working on that part to give them a better working environment, or they be treated better in that kind of situation. So I don't think that it is because now we are sitting here more at a designer part, and of course we have the responsibility to face into the society issues. But still, I think that design is our power or tool in a way to make the life better. So I think in that way, I don't think has to be us to solve that kind of like problem relating to the climate, all these kind of things. Of course, we can try our best.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
Well, again, for the sake of in the debate, all right? Well, as I said, we were already on the winning side. No, but I certainly agree that climate change, social inclusion, poverty issues, they were all important. But when you talk about crime, it implies that that is something that we all agree we should avoid, right? Criminal crime, we should avoid them, right? I mean, Bernard Chimay is, when he says that commit a murder, it's really like a rhetorical proposition, right? So we are being a lot more serious than Bernard. Huh? So when we talk about crime, I do think that, perhaps we would say that we really have to uphold the diversity in our practice. Some people are really good in making beautiful ornamentation, even at school, including Chinese U. I do think that there should be a lot more courses on ornamentation. And in a Crete, every year in the architecture school, if you just actually do a study of ornament, you will be criticized quite heavily. So I do think that the point is to uphold the rights of the minority who could continue their research and creation of beautiful ornamentation. Yeah.
Well, but what Sarah said just now, that we need to redefine it, right? So things, as they are standing, it's not right. There are some things that are not right, and even they are criminal in terms of established values and order, maybe. And if we believe, enough of us believe in it to redefine it and rethink it, I think someone like Kay is the protagonist in doing that. Not to say that we eliminate it, but to say things doesn't work right now and we got to rethink it. And that's what Sarah is saying as well.
I think I'm saying if we're not giving, in a way we have, instead of, the second you start saying, okay, ornament shouldn't happen, then you promote the throwaway culture. But if we start looking at ornament as something much more valuable, if we're giving it a much higher place, you can actually, in my view, avoid the throwaway culture in the end.
Yeah, exactly. So the point is, sorry, Kay, maybe you should come in right now.
I think crime is a very strong word, but I truly believe, okay, if I asked everyone here today, do you think slavery is crime?
Yes.
Right? Basically, fast fashion, fast products, fast architecture, fast everything is about slavery.
That's not ornamentation.
Well,
It
no.
is. It is.
No,
It is. I mean, things are improving, but it's almost like, is eating meat a crime? I mean, if we, zoomed out and looked at us maybe from 100 years later, maybe we would think it's a crime. But maybe today I feel because we are enjoying,
But
everyone is able.
But it's not ornamentation.
It is. I mean, fast fashion is, everyone is able to afford ornamentation of all sorts.
Already did the research, all right? Before mid-19th century, urbanization, modernization, industrialization, ornamentation is in the core kind of competence of designers and architects, right? So when you talk about fast fashion, you just talk about the last 150 years. All right.
Now, I mean, looking at Loos' essay, and he emphasized the idea of ornament as crime. First, he doesn't believe kind of doing friezes and all that ornamentation in the ceiling. But I think the deeper value is that I think that's the term slavery. It becomes quite evident because those days intelligence doesn't lie in doing craftsmen of doing beautiful frieze. I think ornament, it's in the 21st century, nobody really uses it. I mean, through practicing, we don't use the word very much ornament. We talk about experience. It's what kind of experiences we can offer to the public, to people that enjoy a certain place, the sense of place, the sense of identity. So if ornament really can truly represent a sense of identity, I mean, so be it, but there's a spectrum of levels talking about ornament. So ornament itself representing is a crime, which we sort of argue that it is such a deliberate line. And we think that through our accumulated sharing, we think ornament, it's much more, so if you look at digital technologies like VR, for example, you have metaverse, you have, I mean, those things, when you talk about ornament, it's about we believe the sense of identity. People will have an avatar, people will be having, all sorts of representations. So representation, articulation, and true values of self-being, it's something much more complex than the word ornament. So in Loos, if you say when he designed the word ornament, I think his work is very, you would say, very ornamental as well. But he argues his work is not ornamental. So if you look at his work about how marbles are put together, it's completely articulated. And I think that's the word ornamental. But he's saying he doesn't want anything ornament onto it.
Well, let's not do a kind of I already mentioned, an architect's prejudice/bias interpretation of the word ornamentation, all right? And by the way, do you think that we should ban high heels and makeup? But what's your position on that?
That to do with ornamentation?
Well, you can say that, well, for all these reasons, that perhaps makeup and high heels shouldn't exist, and then it's a crime, and we should avoid it.
I think the point is, just to do the ornamentation, whatever ornament, if you decide high heels and things are, it's what they are for, as as Jason was saying. If it was just for the sake of personal taste, personal gratification, individual, satisfaction, without any relevance or relationship to other larger conditions, such as fast fashion, the idea of exploitation, then ornament is definitely a crime. And therefore, we're not saying maybe to eliminate it completely, but to rethink it so that it can become part of the way of how we deal with things and conditions that that have both sides, so to be responsible, basically.
But for that, we need to accept that it is just there to be beautiful. We have to accept that there is an element of all we do which has no function, or even though why beauty is not a function is a different discussion, but which is just there to please, to look nice, to be beautiful. So we need to face that, because otherwise we're just going to do yo-yo, right? Okay, now we're going minimal again because it's about the time, the same kind of reaction than back then, and then we're going to overconsumption again. We need to go one step further, right?
You cannot spend all the time sitting on that side. You have to try here.
No, I'm saying, sorry, Jason, you want to? Well, because I'm saying both sides work, and both sides have their point. And me, as the moderator, if I think of ornament, the idea of setting the order, setting the decorum, that's what ornament means. And in Italian, they have a function called ornatista, the people who do ornaments. And if I, myself, right now, can become an ornatista, an ornament, a frivolous addition to the whole debate, but giving you guys the platform to debate, then I've done my job. It's not whether it's one side or the other, but the extent to which either side can participate, and bring the two sides, individual freedom or beauty for its own sake, as well as the larger issues.
I mean, the thing, we're talking a lot about the word ornament, which always gets the attention. But when he defined it, he talked about it as useful objects. And I think that word useful is key, because then you have to define what use is and relates to the curatorship that's being done here for deTour. And the other thing I think no one talks about is crime, because we all talk about it as murder, but I jaywalk all the time. So I'm a criminal. You know, and I think there's very useful things in sometimes breaking legal rules or systems. And so there's room to play outside of what are set regulations that maybe are, in theory, the best for society if we all follow them, but we all do jazz, or how you want to describe it, on our own. So I think you could also pick at the word crime, and how do we define the word crime within that setting? I mean, are we going to put someone in prison because they wear a t-shirt from fast fashion? Okay, we're probably not going that far, but it also is, how do we define crime and what is useful, which I think is a lot of what is being discussed as well.
So you're changing the topic.
Am I?
So it becomes ornament is not good. I'm actually on this side then.
yeah, come on.
No, but we also need people who help to redefine and recreate. Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, Sarah, yes, please.
I mean, well, you can have, fashion is an ornament, let's say, any fashion. Fast fashion as well as slow fashion is both an ornament. So what we are discussing is not so much is ornament the subject, or how can we deal with ornamentation better in the end of the day. But then it doesn't need to only apply to ornamentation either. It could also apply to a building without any decoration. In the end of the day, I think the reason why it's now being asked is because we see it as the source of fast fashion, for example. And I think that's the real question. Is ornamentation really the reason behind us all buying too many clothes, throwing them out? Let's say, just to stick with it, because it's a bit more complicated to do than architecture. But is that really the reason behind? You know, our need for ornamenting, adorning, decoration, visual stimulation? I guess in a way it is, but by just saying, okay, let's not do any of this anymore at all, you're not getting anywhere in the end.
And I think that, okay, the other things like architecture is just a part of design practice. And we communicate with other kind of like professionals as well. And that's the reason why in the corridor design, the graphic designer comes in. And we may not use the word ornament, but the graphic design for architects may already represent a certain way of ornamenting. So I think that the wording is something ambiguous, but we need to look into the essentials. What is that means for us? And of course, that different words have its own time. And the reason why we're not using ornaments because we are using some other words, style, decoration, these kind of things are more obvious in nowadays.
Yep. Oh, yes. It looks like your team is really desperate to, fight your ground. So, Alvin, please. You.
Well, I think, as I said, we already won, but I think the real questions to many of us, especially there are a lot of architects here, is when they talk about ornament as a crime, I think it's not so much within the architect's practice or architect's will. It's about someone else decorating your work. For instance, you remember I had a photo of the Louvre, right? The pyramid and so forth. And I can imagine that if it is in somewhere such as Hong Kong, people would put horrible Christmas decoration on the pyramid. And then at that situation, I could say that probably ornament is a crime. I mean, it's very particular, right? But of course, that's irrelevant to the topic today.
No, it's very relevant. Justin.
I think the word of ornament, we rarely use it during our practice because when you're setting a brief or setting a building framework, you think about who uses it, you think about context, you think about the history, you think about the timeline of how this place can be used. So in a sense that ornament, it will happen, but we talk about that time. If the time is about permanence or ephemerality, the idea of having this sitting here where we're debating, I think the setting is quite ornamental, I would say, but in terms of time, it will go off tomorrow. But in terms of permanent framework, as Loos will setting out the space, setting out the lighting conditions, setting out how we can use in terms of flexibility. I think that's the ornament cannot do, and I think there's a wider debate of this subject, much wider than just yes or no.
Thank you, Justin. No, I think it's a great ending to our panel discussion, and I think for design or architectural practice, for all of us involved in that is the question that we should be thinking about, right? In terms of how much or how less, or what is the value? I think that is more important. So now I think we've reached the part where we open up the discussion to the audience on the floor. See if there are any burning questions or comments even for those who have a strong position. Supporting ornament is a crime, or the other way. Yes, please.
This is very interesting debate which I have ever attended. And on both ends, they have the rights, and I would not say they have the wrongs, because ornamentation to me, as a fashion industry person, applies a lot of ornaments. And as I am growing older, as I am seeing more and more newness coming in, I believe very much in K, who is doing something about it. But whether the word crime, I think, is very serious, and you are an intellectual group. We shouldn't even use the word crime, because it doesn't exist, in what we are doing. This is a very individual subject. Whether, like we are in fashion, you either like purple or you don't like purple. So how can it be, I go for a crime or I don't go for a crime? But I indeed learned a lot from all of you, and I believe every one of you who said the right thing. And what we are going to do, practicalness is our future too, and which is we are living. We all have to earn a living. So if I am going out to an interview without makeup and wearing a shorts and slippers, do you think I will get a job? I don't know, okay? But on the other hand, if Leon just said she is so right about architecture. I am not in the architecture, so I'm not familiarized about that, but I also have an eye to see what is nice, what is not nice, and what I can express. So in other words, does ornament apply to architecture? I don't know. You have to educate me. But on the other hand, ornament is really a very serious word on where you apply to. And I applaud to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Very enlightening. I think the fact that Adolf Loos, the guy, the Austrian architect who came up with the essay, actually he was lecturing at the time. He was actually being polemic. He was, there were his enemies who were doing all sorts of silly things in his mind. And he wanted to say they are criminals, and he is kind of right. So, although he himself, when he made his buildings, also have a kind of decorative side to it. So I think being provocative is also one way to bring up the discussion that's very important. Yes?
I think it's great that you put this into kind of a historical context, because obviously it was out of reaction towards the Art Nouveau and so forth, right? Now, I think it was very inspiring, your comment. Thank you for that. Because I immediately, when you were speaking, immediately thinking that these people should be surveyors. I mean, imagine surveyors and architects, and the surveyors will certainly say that, why are you spending money on the ornament? Huh? So ornament must be a crime, right? So I do think that our mission today is really to re-inject into the importance of, let's say I used the word earlier, the pursuit of beauty. And I think, I'm not saying that ornamentation is the only way to do so. I do think that architects would have different ways to approach such subject, but I think it's important because it's all the project management, it's the surveyors who were in charge, right? Who were all kind of against ornamentation.
I think Justin will react because you're telling him he's a surveyor.
I'm just on my personal reflection of how architects operate, and probably somehow resonates to a lot of RIBA members. It's that I think project management is just one of the things that we do. But I think what the lady just mentioned about the idea of we have to, the sense of identity, I think that's truly what we architects truly believe. We have to create a sense of identity for people. We create places that reflects culture, and that cannot just solely become an infrastructure, but we look at history, texture, materials, and that sense of elements, those things embodied in terms of to create that sense of place. So in terms of ornament, perhaps you could say it's just one level of it, but there's a lot more than just ornamental.
Okay, so before Sarah talks, I think because we're running, in the interest of time, I'll just ask if there are any more questions from the floor or comments. If not, maybe I'll just get the panelists to actually have any last word, any last proposition or opposition statement.
I just wanted to answer. I think it's also an illusion, though, that we can have ornamentation which is always with the function. I think ultimately, no matter what we do, and yes, we're saying we need to give an identity, etc., but there are arbitrary choices at any point in time. They mean nothing, and it's okay. I think the idea that as an architect we always have this idea like, oh yeah, if I do this, everything makes sense and everything has a rational. But there is an irrational component, and it's good that there is, and there will always be. And I think.
Sarah, thank you. Any other final word from either team?
I just want to remind everyone that this team here keeps saying that, including you, Justin, particularly, that ornament is not the most important parameter or consideration in design. And I agree with that, but today's topic is ornament is crime. And as the lady said, it's the wrong choice of word, and we won.
Right, we all blame Adolf Loos then.
I think just the very last word, I think the topic is about creating common ground. It's somehow it's about sharing, and everyone is different, I guess. It's has a very different types of views, and that's what I sort of believe that it's a great place to be. You can truly reflect your kind of views.
Hey, thank you all. Thank you, our panelists. And I guess before we end, we have our final round of votes, right? So, hands again. Those who are for ornament is a crime. Oh. Yes, please. Okay, do we have to have the other vote? Ornament is not a crime. Whoa. So, the opposition won. Thank you all.